their arguments is, and this is what but the SEC is going to look on whether or not the people buying think they're becoming an owner of this particular, what could be security if they rule it such. Depending on how the deal is structured, the investment in the tokens might lead to a future share in revenues of the venture. In other cases, the investment can be compared to fundraising or a crowdfunding vehicle using tokens that could be redeemed for cash at a later date once the venture is successful. Since the issuance of such tokens is currently outside the scope of regulatory oversight, they are seen as a quick way in which tech startups can raise capital without all of the necessary requirements that would come with, say, an initial public offering in stocks. So we'll see what the regulators say, but this is right now, it's not deterring anybody from investing in
how many times did folks knock on the SEC's door and told them about the fraud being perpetrated by Bernie Madoff?
Sure.
I think it was 4 times.
It was Harry McAfee, and he's warning of another fraud, but I don't know if he's actually going to get the SEC to look at that.
Right. So, I mean, the SEC, they have their good days and their bad days. They're not. They, as I said, their profile in the marketplace is shaped by money, by lobbyists, by contributions, by politics. And I think that the crypto community knows that with this added $100 billion, soon to be $200 billion, and then $500 billion, that they have tremendous latitude to reshape the law in their image to support the crypto universe, which is a debarkation point from a system that supported ultimately a failed state called America, a failed state called Britain. Britain's in free fall. Britain's collapsing. A failed state called Greece, Spain, France. All the economics of the 20th century, 19th century, 20th century have generated a failed globe.
So yeah, even back in the beginning of the nation state, when early nation states, we had the emergence of things like the East India Company. The stock market in Amsterdam was basically created for that. We had that led to all sorts of speculative investments eventually in London, the South Sea bubble, the tulip bubble. People became insane and then lost it all. And that's when people started being beheaded. That's when the king started beheading people because he lost money. It depends on if you basically ruin the wrong people with these. But in terms of what the article from Reuters, who they talked to about whether or not the SEC will get involved, they do establish that the SEC is in fact looking at it. Whether or not they get involved, we don't know. They did decline to allow the Winklevoss brothers to launch their own ETF. But from a regulatory and legal perspective, what remains contentious is whether the issuance of such coins are the equivalent to the creation of a new security and should therefore come under the oversight and regulation of the SEC. Peter von Valkenburg, director of research at cryptocurrency advocacy group Coin Center, told a recent New York City conference that what participants in the market want to avoid is the creation of a token that acts as a security. Quote, it's like painting a target on yourself, because what does an organization like the SEC regulate? They regulate IPOs. That's what they regulate. So let's just change one letter and make it a C and then it's okay, right? No. Why would you adopt the terminology of the regulator when you're building a thing you hope they don't regulate? He asked. I know you say and you maintain that the nation state is falling apart. However, long after governments fail, the bureaucracies remain. And those bureaucracies are things like the SEC. And they have their power is to regulate the IPO. And you try to mess with their power, then they disintegrate. So they're going to do everything to maintain their power. And if you say, oh, my ICO is like an IPO, but not an IPO because it's a C, not a P. You see? Get it? You could be taunting them. They could be taunting the wrong person.
And they're venal.
Of course.
And you open a Bitcoin wallet for everyone at the SEC, and you start sending them Bitcoin, I guarantee you they're going to change their tune. That's the way it works in America. It's the dollar, baby. There's no concept of or ideology it's free market competition. And nothing is more free market competition than cryptocurrencies. And we're going to reshape the entire regulatory framework. Now, of course, it's volatile. It always has been volatile.
That's what I was going to get into. In the last bit here, I want to establish that everybody is making money right now, and they're all happy, and they're all insanely happy, and they're hysterics, and they're high, and they feel good. But again, not all ICOs are created equally. Due to the complexity of the underlying projects, experts argue that investors need to have the technical expertise to be able to evaluate whether investing in an ICO makes sense. Moreover, the startup itself should provide sufficient information for investors to evaluate the investment. In some cases, the information is inadequate. So, people are pouring money into it. We will warn you that some of these, they might just be exactly like the South Sea bubble. Famously, during all of that, the Hogarth had some prints about people down there in the city of London, insane. It was like bacchanalia. It was like insanity around everybody just trying to, they set up a little shop with their little cardboard boxes and saying, like, here, invest in my entity. Our mission, our enterprise is to yet be determined. We're going to do something. Just give us money and you'll make a lot of money. So this is what a lot of these ICOs at the moment could be about.
Well, Warren Buffett famously compared Bitcoin to rat poison. But what he ironically did not understand is that the rat in this occasion is Warren Buffett.